You know, if you go to New Burlington Street in the very heart of London, you are literally in the very much midst of a real historic royal event. Oh yes, it might not look anything, but really what happened here on that street way back in the 1930s changed the whole direction of the British monarchy. As ever, let me explain. Hi, morning chums, nice to see you. Thank you so much as ever for joining me. Nice to have your company. And welcome one and all as ever, brand new subscribers. It's lovely to say that. Hope you enjoy the channel. Do stick with us. We're a lovely friendly bunch. And I try and give you a little bit of variety of life so that you see different things, hear different stories you might not have heard of, and more importantly, things that just take us away a little bit from the stresses and strains of like we all need a break, don't we? Don't switch me off, you don't need that much of a break, but you know what I mean? We just need a reflection sometimes on something else. And as many people know who watch the channel on a regular basis, I love royal history. I think we all do secretly. And what I like finding actually in the stories that I really love sharing with you are the fact that, you know, everybody thinks they know the story and there's always something else, isn't it? Because as time moves on, as people sadly leave us, they leave behind letters, diaries, information that nobody else knew anything about. You know the sort of thing I'm talking about. And you know, one of my favourite royals was none other than Queen Mary. And the reason why I like Queen Mary was the fact that she was kind of, you know, very shrewd, very clever, but did everything as a lady of her sort of years would in the Edwardian way, very much under the radar, was totally across everything. And I think a very good trainer for the late Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth. The Queen Mother, you know, lovely smiley face, but knew every single thing that was going on in and outside the palaces. And Queen Mary was no different, particularly regarding this woman, Wallis Simpson, the infamous Wallis Simpson. You see, in November 1936, the Prime Minister of the time, Stanley Baldwin, had of course been battling back and forth with the king about his reasons for wanting to abdicate, all that sort of stuff. And as we know, he wanted to leave because of the woman that he loved, and he couldn't cope with this life unless she could be on the throne. Different times, different sort of makes, as we all know, and it couldn't happen. Would it happen today? I'm not so sure. I'd love to know what you think about that. I don't think it still would happen today because people simply wouldn't accept it. But Wallis Simpson was far more demure than some might say some of the people that we have now battling for security. You get the picture. But you see, while the king at the time was thinking he'd kept a lot of secrets away from his mother, Queen Mary, well, she was totally across it. And for one simple reason. This street, as I say, in London, Burlington Street, was the home of the esteemed jeweller Cartier. Been there since 1909 and of course been a supplier of diamonds and all things sparkling to the British monarchy. And Queen Mary loved a sparkling thing or two, let me tell you. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the king had gone in on numerous occasions to quietly discuss an engagement ring with Cartier about for his wife to be Wallis, right? And all of this was done very much in sort of not discreet, as it were, because they didn't have a side door or a private entrance in those days, but he would just turn up. He had a hat on, nobody noticed him from anybody. He went at very selective times. And he thought he kept all of this an incredible secret until Stanley Baldwin, the Prime Minister, had to make that fateful conversation with, of course, Queen Mary. And he sat there and waited for the bombshell, and she said, well, of course I knew. And he sort of sat there and said, sorry? And she said, well, of course I knew. I mean, I knew he'd been to Cartier on a number of occasions. Why on earth would the king be going to Cartier if not to plan something special for someone? Is it an engagement ring? And at that point, according to official records, that's when Stanley Baldwin knew that the real power in this dynamic wasn't with Wallis or the king or Edward and Mrs. Simpson, whatever you want to call them, but actually with Queen Mary. And he very quickly decided that if he wanted to survive in the royal court, he better make sure that he's more open with her. And that really is the background to the breakdown of the relationship with the Prime Minister and the then King, Edward and Mrs. Simpson. And he felt that he'd been, shall we say, slighted, given the fact that Stanley Baldwin had not been open with him. But actually it was nothing to do with the Prime Minister. It was all to do with the giant that was Cartier, the underground whispers that Queen Mary would have had literally at her fingertips, even then. And what you have to think about, she wouldn't have needed social media to know what her son was up to. And that truly is how the Queen Mary found out all about what was about to become one of the most damaging, some people say, aspects of the British monarchy. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.